Good afternoon, I'm Tiro, and these are notes for the game engine. This isn't pertaining to Project Pius, but it's basically a crash course in game development just to test my capabilities of transmitting the information and mastering it. Alrighty, first up, the engine. Basically, your game engine is whatever you want it to be and whatever you write. I make this point because when you go to a lot of tutorials, they say, or emphasize making a very good, nice engine, but it's whatever that works. Basically, there's somewhat of a miscommunication, especially to a novice, of just use good programming techniques to write your game. So, appropriate comments, object-oriented, abstraction, blah blah blah. You don't have to have professional grade quality engines such as Quake or RPG Maker 2, where anyone and everyone in the entire community can use it. Um, just be a good programmer and you're fine. If you decide to make another game and it happens to work, hey, you did a good job. If not, hey, you have another challenge ahead. But don't worry about it. Okay. Now, ModelViewController. This is a system that's common in games, and it's a huge coincidence that in my chess program, our team used this even though we didn't know about it. This is the strategy we decided to follow, and basically it turned out everyone else does it as well. So it works. First is the model, which is basically all the logic and representation of your game. So variables and functions that implement the rules of your game. Doesn't have to do anything with imaging or pictures. Basically, the computer should be able to play the game by itself without you even worrying about playing it or seeing it. All the rules, all the abstraction, blah 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 blah. View is basically the graphics. This is the sprites, textures, your screen, drawing, special effects, laser beams, whatever. This has no effect whatsoever on the model or the actual game, and the game has no effect on the graphics. There is communication between the two, but one doesn't control the other, or at least not directly. Keep it separate. So, just as you can switch any game out for your program, you should be able to switch any graphics. So I could use SDL, I could use OpenGL, I could use text and make it a text-based adventure, and the game should still be able to function properly. Finally is the controller, and this is your input. So keyboard, mouse, but remember this is dealing with abstraction. I could have the controller be a text file that the game reads and therefore plays the game. It works, and that's how it should be. So just this is the standard abstraction for games. The game, the display, and how you control it. Kind of a fourth section to this is the AI. How does the computer interact with the player if necessary? And you either can shove it with the actual game or the controller. Basically, if the computer acts like a player, have it with the controller. Otherwise, deal with the game. A computer acting exactly like a player would be in a first-person shooter or a fighter game in which the enemies are basically the same as the characters and act the exact same way. Different weapons, different stats, but essentially the same. This is to taste game to game and how you would want to do it. Okay, and now the universal game template. This is how a majority of games are written. You can do it in a different way, but don't be surprised if it looks like this. First, you init. Basically, especially with graphics, you have a lot of function calls just to start things up, such as defining a window, setting the memory, having a buffer, setting the synchronization, all that jazz. That is the initialization. Also, anything your game needs to start up for itself. So, loading characters, initial variables, blah blah blah. Complementing it is the quit. You just allocated all this stuff for the graphics. Now you gotta release it so the computer doesn't hang or suck up memory. Also, if your game needs to update things like save files or configurations and stuff, do it in the quit. Right in the middle is an infinite loop. While the game is not over, do stuff. Basically, somewhere in the game logic, you will change game over to have it break out, or even you might have a breakout. Basically, it's like when you lose the game or when you go to file quit, that's when you come out, and basically you just do it forever. This is how the listening aspect is implemented. And inside, you just tick and render. Render? No, render, yes, got it right. Tick is basically your game. So all the logic for how you play the game goes there. Render is all the logic to display the game. And please note that these do not have to be equal. So if we're doing something as a game as in tic-tac-toe, tick is really not going to do a lot of things. It's just going to get the move and that's it. And render will just display the X's and O's, but until you do something else, nothing's going to go on. Just keep counting numbers in that infinite loop. This is natural. Also note that the tick and render do not have to be equal. When you're dealing with high graphics and ends, you will have to balance between thinking and drawing to have a smooth display of the game. And there are different techniques to do it. I'm not going to explain it because these vary game to game, and it's more of like how you would like to do it and such. Okay. Now, and also, this is it for the game. This is how all games are. Very bizarre, but that's how it works. Another common thing is how to deal with input. Input usually will be in the tick, but if it's a very simple game, don't be surprised if you just put it in the while loop because, you know, it's a simple game. Don't need to have too much abstraction. And this is how you deal with it. First, you get your key, or your input, from however it is. You put it in a switch case, and then you deal with each case one by one. So, if you pressed up, do this. Press down, do that. Left, right, A, B. Don't be surprised if this list is huge, especially if you have a keyboard and every single key press, like in Rogue, does something. This is natural because it's a simple mechanic. All it's doing is just dealing with input and letting all the function calls deal explicitly with how to what the game does. You don't have to have function calls. You may actually have some code and stuff, but basically it's a case-by-case scenario. So another point. Yes. If you don't have a select or switch, basically you can just do it with the if-else change. So if up, do this. Else if down, else if left, else if right. Same thing. And that is it to designing game. Everything else is just the details on how you want to do it and just research on how to do it. So, until next time, I'm Tiro, and have fun making games. See ya!